If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything that you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on any listening platform like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. From Battlefield Studio Alpha, welcome to the Wartime Leadership Podcast, where we explore what spiritual resiliency looks like from different perspectives. We often focus on the physical, emotional, and social areas of resiliency, but too often we neglect the spiritual pillar. Now, all four pillars are very, very important to ensure that us as the human is moving in the right direction, but this looks different for everyone. We will be exploring what spiritual resilience looks like in the lives of our guests, who are people from all different walks of life. I'm your host, Nathan Coy, and today's guest is Vin Infante. Hey, see, I had to do the fingers thing. You all can't see it, and that's okay, because we're both doing it, so it's all right. Hey, Vin, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, but I feel we got to elaborate on what the fingers thing is, because people might not get it.
We're already having fun. You know, how do you describe it? Like,
So it's the Italian, like, forget about it gesture, where the guy's like, oh, like, what's the matter with you? Like the hands are clasped in a way that they kind of look like the claws on the pickup crane machines before they're open.
And we're sitting here looking at each other, still doing this. Okay, we're just going to do the fingers thing until somebody actually decides to move on. See, folks, you're in for a treat. I'm telling you, tonight's going to be a great episode. Good golly. All right, hey, Ben, before we get going too much into this, I have some random questions from my random question generator, all right? Now, I'm not going to, I have to warn you, this did get me in trouble once. One of the questions was, if you could kill somebody, and the guy immediately started answering with names. So I'm going to ask you to wait until I ask the entire question, because you would have quickly found out that it's would you instead of name the person. So, all right. All right. This one's actually a really easy one. Who do you look up to?
Well, I'm 5'8", so most people. No. I would say if it was somebody that is currently alive, this is tough. I have a lot of people though. I really admire so many. I'm gonna go with my dad. You know, I was tossed up between my dad and Tony Robbins, but my dad had inspired me on this path of helping others because my dad's a therapist. So ever since I was a kid, I said I wanted to become a therapist because I really, like, my dad's the greatest in my eyes, or he always was. So that inspired me on this path of self-development, helping others, and was the initial, like, foot in the door before I fucking knocked that thing open and really figured out what I wanted to do. So,
oh, that's cool.
I think I'm going to keep my dad in the top.
Man, it's awesome that you had Tony Robbins and your dad, and you went with your dad, because that is 100% the way it's supposed to be, right? You would hope. You would hope.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's funny because that's the two-parter. Like, I started as a therapist because of my dad, but I left traditional therapy and pursued coaching because of Tony Robbins. So
it's a twofer. We got it. Hey, okay, so you actually made a good deal. Okay, so somebody who was alive. Now, if you could have somebody that was deceased, who
got you? Marcus Aurelius.
Greatest speech teller of all time.
Greatest stoic ever. So yeah, I love it. I got some of his quotes. I've read through meditations, and I'm also a very big fan of Stoicism. So Marcus Aurelius, 100%.
Oh, that's going to be perfect then. All right. Hey, what's the longest amount of time that you have spent binge watching something?
I think I spent like a whole day at one point because I got turned on to this series called Demon Slayer. I'm a big fan of anime. Watched the entire season because it was like 2 seasons in. I literally spent an entire day on it. My friend was like, "Hey, you should check out the show." I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I checked it out, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Well, the show's great." He's like, "Where are you at?" I was like, "No, no, the show was great. Like, I'm
No,
done."
seriously. The entire thing. Yeah, I've done that a few times myself with some stuff. I'm not so much into the anime. My kid is, and she continues to explain it to me, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. I've been
I
stationed
get it.
overseas in the Pacific area, so I get the take with it, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Akira was like the
You
most
were
that I
surrounded.
could sit down and do that.
Yeah, you were surrounded by the anime. I got it.
And I even married the anime, which is even better. So it's great. Hey, what should I know about you that I would never think to ask you?
Well, I'm also in a relationship with the anime, but I guess what
My wife is going to kill
what
me.
you should know about me. We're both gonna die, but that's all right. Maybe we just release this episode, but restrict it from them anyway. So, I think the biggest thing that most people uh, should know about me but would probably never suspect or ask me is that I was bullied my entire life, and I didn't even have my first girlfriend until I was 19, and I didn't have like any friends until I was like also 19 or 20.
Wow, you're right. I would
Yeah.
absolutely never imagine that. I mean, even in the short like 5 minutes that we had together before I hit record was, I mean, just it was a blast to be around you. So I can't imagine that. All right.
Yeah,
So
I created this guy.
I done made him myself. What is your favorite way to spend a weekend besides watching anime?
So I'm a man of many simple pleasures. I I like anime. I like gaming. I'm still a big. Well, I shouldn't say I'm still a big gamer. I have not had the time to game, but I love gaming. I love hiking. Absolutely mad about nature. I travel to go hike. I've traveled around a decent amount of the U.S. to hike, and I love weightlifting. So, oh, and I mean, how could I forget? I have a daughter. I like spending time with her. She's pretty great.
Yeah, don't forget the
I
kid.
You know what it is, man? Hold on. Listen. For any other parent out there that might be feeling the guilt I'm feeling in this immediate moment for putting my kid last behind everything, I'm still a new dad. My kid's only 11 months old. I barely even know her. So yes, all my things I've known longer and have that relationship with.
You're like, what's my favorite things? Okay, well, you got peanut butter, you've got ice cream, you've got hiking. Can't forget hiking. And there's something else. I know there's, oh, my child. Yes, my child. I do like my child.
She's there. She reminds me she's there with how little I sleep to be reminded that she's there.
You're like, how
You know
could
where I
I
get sleep,
forget you?
Nathan? I get sleep on hiking trips.
That's why you like hiking so much. Hey, so do you live in New York City proper, like actually in the city?
No, God, that's awful. I live in Staten Island.
Okay. Oh, I mean, okay. So I know very little about New York. I've actually got two guys here right now that are from New York City, and they've tried to
Oh,
explain to me the borough system, and I'm like, I, uh, but it's New York City, right? Like it's still, and they're like, no,
yeah.
and I'm like, what? What do you mean no? Because I'm pretty sure that New York City is New York City. Can you explain it to me? Try to
Uh,
simplify it for us dummies out here.
All right. we don't go to the Bronx. Manhattan's okay. I am a little biased though, right? Because I live in Staten Island. I've lived here my whole life. Manhattan to me is way too noisy, loud, congested.
Okay.
I grew up on Staten Island. Staten Island is like the suburb of New York in the sense that everybody pretty much lives in houses out here. We all have front and backyards. There's forests. You can literally go hiking. Like, they're not spectacular trails, but there's nice little nature trails, lots of parks out here. So, I mean, dude, we have turkeys walking in the street. We got deer running around. Like, it's weird out here.
Wow, are they like hitchhiking or something? Like, let me get out of the city here. Let me just, because I was wondering, because you like hiking.
Oh yeah,
had no clue.
Makes sense. As a kid, I used to go in the forest and like try to build little tree forts, and that was my.
So you actually had the true childhood with it. So
I tried. I mean, I wasn't allowed in the woods. I had to sneak in there to attempt to make wood fortresses and sharpen spears and all that. Because I'm also a big military history nerd. So like ancient, medieval, etc. So I used to pretend I was like a soldier, Spartan, around with a spear in the woods, which I made by grinding on them.
Like real men. So I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina. So we have a lot of military history here, obviously centered around more of the Civil War and the Revolutionary War type time period. But I have a really good friend that lives, okay, this is going to sound weird. He's out in the middle of nowhere, but he likes to like forge his own knives and stuff. So I have started to learn how to forge knives. So that's my next adventure.
I like that.
You know what? I'm doing a spear next time. Screw it. I am doing a spear in honor of Vin.
Next time, after the spear, you get really gully, just make a war axe. Double-sided.
Ooh, yes. Double-sided with the whole split. Oh, yes. Good idea, Vin. And I'll do that one in honor of just because. All right. Hey, man. Why don't you take us down a road? Take us down your background. Give us your background history as far back as you want to go. Bring us up to the present. Just kind of give us those nuggets of who Vin is and how you got here.
All right. For fun's sake, I'm going to give you guys the abridged version, and if you care to learn more, you could jump in, Nathan. So I'll bring it back to the childhood. I think it's really important to note that part of I did get bullied my whole life. I was the victim most of my life. I was diagnosed with depression. I was diagnosed with anxiety, panic disorder, had a lot of suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. And I was the kid that was like thrown down steps, thrown into trash cans. Man, I got pantsed by my crush in the middle school schoolyard, like during recess. That wasn't great. I was wearing tighty whities that day. So there's a lot of embarrassing moments in my life, which led to a crippling and amazing video game addiction. So that escapism of getting out of reality to create a life I wanted in video games. So that was pretty much how I spent most of my life. And I was really fed up trying to go into college. I was just at this point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, as one of those great motivational speakers. Everybody's just yelling at you. So that kind of stuck in my head. And I was like, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I need to reinvent myself. But I did like the lazy way of reinventing myself. So, Nathan, you could see, but the listeners can't. I have these degrees behind me. And these degrees, these pieces of paper, say that I am qualified to do what I do, right? But more importantly, what these degrees say, they say the name Vincenzo instead of Vincent. Reason being is I decided I was going to reinvent myself by writing Vincenzo on all of my college transcripts because I thought that was cooler than Vincent. And I thought that would be me creating the coolest version of myself, right? And it's interesting because it sort of worked, but it also didn't. When I say that it worked, but it didn't, is because I changed some parts of myself. I started working out. I grew out a beard. I changed my hairstyle, got different clothes, and I had a just different way about me. But on the inside, I was still this guy who was like anxious and nervous and sad and scared and panicky and all that good stuff. And so girls started becoming interested in me, but I had no idea because I never had girls interested in me. And then guys wanted to start becoming my friends, but I didn't really know how to like bring anything to the table because I didn't really have many friends. I had like one friend or two friends throughout high school, right? My group of friends in high school was actually my friends' friends. So kind of just like clung to that circle. But I only had one friend in high school. And it was interesting. So I started getting this attention. I didn't know what to do with it. And I wound up excelling, oddly enough, right? In undergrad, I graduated in Psychi National Honor Society. I was a lead presenter in the undergrad psych research conference on a drug/emotion research that we did. I was accepted into every master's program I applied for. I was working as a personal trainer, working as a mental health worker in a hospital while going to school full time. And all this stuff was great. Still a mess on the inside, man. Terrible relationships. Couldn't figure out how to really create strong friendships. Very codependent in my relationships. Couldn't keep a girl. Got cheated on multiple times, etc., etc. So I go for my master's, and in there things are worse. I want to like drop out of my program every damn day. I hated my whole life, and I couldn't figure out what I needed to do. So somehow, skin in my teeth, make it through the master's program. And by skin in my teeth, I'm not talking like school-wise. I was still doing well in school. It was more just mentally. Like I was full on having mental breakdowns like maybe once a month at that point. I was like crying and spiraling and just my panic attacks were so bad at that point. I literally had my therapist on speed dial. Like I had to call him for every decision I wanted to make because I couldn't make a decision. If me and my girlfriend got into a fight, I would like panic text him, call him and be like, please, I need a session. I don't know what to say. And it really was like I didn't trust myself, right? So it was super, super terrible. He was like, maybe you should go on medication. I was like, no, fuck you. I'm not going on medication. You should help me. Like, I was a
just
terrible
do
client.
your job.
Do it. Nathan, if you're curious, he was not doing his job well.
And how did that make you feel? Sorry, I had to go in.
Honestly, no, hold on. Let's pause my story for this moment. That would have been a step up. You know what used to happen? I would go in, I would vent for like 30 minutes, and he'd be like, so what else is new? I'd be like, what else is new? I just screamed my head off for 30 minutes telling you how my life sucks. You're asking me what else is. How do you think my life is going that anything else is new here?
And you wrote no notes down. Nothing.
Yes, Nathan, great observation. The man would sit there, one leg folded. I'll never forget it. Both hands folded amongst themselves. He's just like, and crinkle his nose, close his eyes. What else is new? Like, man, nothing changed in the past 30 minutes.
For an easy $500 an hour, I too will be your psychotherapist. Jeez.
I love it. So that was my experience with that guy. But he did what he could to help. It just clearly was not enough. I also was not a very good client because I would have all these crazy panic attacks. Anyhow, let's skip to the fun part. So 23, I graduate. I think I was the youngest in my class. I like to believe I was because I didn't know anybody else in the master's that was 23 because I did school straight through. I did 4 years, summer classes every year while working full time, all that shit just to keep in a literal 6-year span. Wow. So I graduated on time, master's at 23. And at 23 years old, now I was like, okay, cool. So I have my master's in social work with a clinical focus. That's basically gearing me towards, doing one-to-one therapy. And I have this background in psych, all this cool stuff. Now I got my license. I'm fully licensed psychotherapist. And I'm like, I'm going to quit both of my jobs and do nothing. I was like, I'm not ready. And so quit both of my jobs. Yeah.
Wow. And it just out of nowhere, like, okay. I got nothing better to do, so I'm going to do nothing because it's better.
Well, I was like, I got to figure this shit out, man. Like, my life is miserable, but it's not. It's actually great. Like, it's one of those things where a lot of people don't get it, right? So they'll look at people, for instance, like, oh, this dude's a millionaire. Or, oh, this dude has his life together. Why is he depressed? What does he have to be depressed about? And it makes it very hard to get help when it looks like you have your shit together, because people are going to consistently judge you. And that was kind of one of the things I was coming up against, right? Because, like, you look at me, maybe you think I'm good looking. Maybe you think I don't. I'd like to think I'm good looking. So you look at me, it's like, all right, there's this guy. He's got a decent body. I've been working out for a while. I was a personal trainer, like I said. So I got my body in order. I really did a lot of work on myself to make myself look like a more presentable guy, make myself good looking, etc. And then I had a Camaro because fuck it, why not? I'm 23 years old. I had worked 2 jobs most of my life. I saved a decent amount of money, and I'm celebrating that I have a master's degree and a crazy licensure at 23. So I got a Camaro, and I had a really good looking girlfriend at the time, right? And it looked like I had my whole life together, but I was miserable. And so it was actually annoying to me. I was like, this is ridiculous. I seemingly have everything. Why am I still so miserable? And I call this the moment in the mirror. This is the aha moment. We can make a Hallmark movie out of it. And I was in my parents' bathroom at the time. I still lived at home. And I was so frustrated with life, man. I'm just sitting there, and I like slammed my hands on the counter. And I'm like, what? I was like, what is wrong? Why am I still so angry and upset and frustrated, depressed, and all this shit? I couldn't figure it out. I swear, I really couldn't. And then I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, oh my God. Get it. I finally get it. Nathan, I'm still getting chills, man. Every time I tell this part, I get chills. And I was like, I finally get it. You're Vincent. And that was the first time in like 7 years that I actually said my real name. And that was powerful. And the reason that I've come to learn why it was powerful, because it was me doing a few things. One, I call radical self-acceptance. I finally accepted myself. And with taking back my name and claiming my power of me, was being willing to say everything that's happened has happened. Everything that's currently going on is a result of everything that's happened, which we're all. And everything that will happen is also ultimately up to me from this moment. Wow. Number 2 is extreme ownership. You've probably heard the term, Jocko Willink, right? Great book. I didn't know it at the time, but I was implementing extreme ownership. I said to myself, I was like, and I had this really great conversation, so much so that if anyone had heard me, they might have called a psych unit on me. Because I'm sitting there in this mirror, and I'm like yelling almost at myself, and I'm like, you're weak, you're helpless, you're depressed, you're a victim, you're anxious, you're having panic attacks, people pity you, nobody's inspired by you, you can't lead anyone, people help you out because you need it because you can't do it yourself. And I just had like this super angry conversation. And I was like, is this who you want to keep being? Like, no. Who do you want to be? And then I just started like shouting that. I was like, I want to be inspiring. I want to be courageous. I want to be a leader. I want to be empowering. I want people to think I'm capable. I want to be happy. I want to just be like powerful. I don't know how to describe it. I want to be more. And I was like, great. Now that we're here, what do we do to get there? Who do you need to become? How would you act? What would you do? What would you say? And then I started getting into these aspects of self-mastery, of like focusing on what I can and letting go of what I can't. And then I got into what I believe is internal leadership, which is understanding that leadership isn't based on a title or position. It's more based on the identity you hold and how you want to show up in life, what presence is that you carry. And so listen, at 23, I didn't conceptualize any of this shit. I just knew in that moment when I took my name back, 90% of my depression, 90% of my anxiety went away. Yeah. I haven't had a panic attack since I was 22 years old. And the reality is once that shit melted away and I had these moments of clarity, these moments of power, that led me on the trajectory of self-development. That led me on building the person you're talking to today. And I worked since I was 18 to 28 in a traditional psych setting. I've been pretty much everywhere. I was in inpatient, outpatient, hospitals, clinics, homeless shelter, private practice, Department of Education, applied behavioral analysis, traveling home therapist. Wow. Then 28, I got called for my second childhood dream, which was to become a firefighter. And so I took that because in New York, you age out at 29. And so I was like, this is a once in a lifetime. Let's go. I could always go back to being a therapist. I also felt like therapy wasn't helping enough people. So I started losing interest in it, but I always wanted to continue helping people. So I was like, there has to be a better way. That's how I stumbled onto Tony Robbins, because I was looking for who's creating the most impact on this planet. I believe it to be him. So I started studying coaching under Tony. I went for his RMT, strategic intervention coaching certification training. So I got that. And then once I was in the fire department, I was there for a year. I was there through COVID, through the riots, the protests, all the good stuff. And after a year, this unique hybrid service of therapy, mentoring, and coaching that I created started really taking off. And so I had to make that really tough decision of, do I stay as a firefighter and kind of let the business down? Because it was rampant, man. I actually tried to take a leave from the fire department, but I couldn't get it because I was still on probation, unfortunately. And I was willing to take the unpaid leave because I didn't care. Like, I wanted to possibly return to the fire department, but I wanted to do this with all my heart. And unfortunately, as a probie, I wasn't able to get that. And so it was probably one of the harder decisions of my life to give up this now second childhood dream and pursue something I don't know, but I felt extremely called for it. And so I made the tough decision, handed in my letter of resignation, and pursued my coaching path. And, I was doing it part-time for 2 years, and now I've been doing it full-time for 3 years. I've never been fucking happier.
So now that was the 3-minute abridged version of the story.
I got excited.
You're like, I'm going to do 3 minutes of the abridged version. 15 minutes later, we're on the 10-minute version. Hey, but dude, so much great information. So now, okay, wow, there's a lot to unpack, and
I saw your interest.
Dude, I got. Are you kidding me? Are you seeing all this? Like, I'm like jumping back and forth between the two. The mental health side of it is a huge thing, because when in the military, I see a lot of individuals committing suicide. In 18 years, I have 7 close personal friends that I could name their names that have committed suicide. And a majority of them, you would never see a sign of it, because they were a shell of what they thought they were supposed to be. So to hear you, even in the mental health field, coming at it from that angle, is incredible, to know that you yourself were dealing with and being affected by your own mental health going through while working in an industry. I think of Robin Williams, somebody that you would never imagine to have these issues, but yet, it's very apparent that he did. So what an amazing transition for you in your own life, to go to these different positions and then to do every one of those jobs. But when you went to the fire department, did you take that mental health aspect with you?
I like to try. Mm-hmm. It was obviously a very different setting for me, right? So you know it because you're a military guy. The fire department in New York, we're actually the world-renowned fire department. There's no firefighting tactics or departments that are more aggressive than New York. Mm-hmm. And so literally fire departments from all over the world will send people to learn from what we do. And so why the fire department is so powerful in New York is because, 1, very aggressive. 2, is run like a paramilitary organization. We go through training with drill instructors. We get the shit kicked out of us. I don't know what you guys refer to it, but we would call it getting smoked, when it's that stupid shit of just doing push-ups because somebody farted the wrong way.
Same thing.
You farted. Yeah, so you're in formation. Fuck. Like, so, so like, it's very interesting to go through that. A part of what I was personally dealing with, and actually, I'm glad you asked this question because I never really shared this. Part of going through the fire department was difficult for me because I went through so much bullying. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that I wasn't healed and I wasn't over it, but it was a very familiar feeling. Like, getting blamed for shit you didn't do, which I know it's part of the military, yada yada. Like, you keep your teammate in line, right? Like, that guy next to you, that lineman, you're responsible for him. I had a DI come over because my lineman, my good friend on formations, had the problem with wiggling while standing still. Don't get it. It's a simple test. Just stand there and stop fucking moving, right? But he would keep, yeah, exactly. Just, whatever. He couldn't do it. So he was always getting smoked. And one time the DI comes over and like literally punches me in the chest. He's like, if he fucks up again, I'm punishing you. I'm like, great.
I guess I'm being punished again.
I guess, wait. And so, it was a very interesting, familiar feeling. I like to think of myself as a fun guy, but I also have trouble fitting in the guy circles because I still at heart am kind of that awkward dude who doesn't really fit in. Like, I'm not really going to talk about certain things. Like, dude, I don't even watch sports. Everybody's talking about sports and they're connecting that way. I'm like, does anyone play World of Warcraft? Like,
anybody? Wow. Anyone? No? Okay.
And so it's still like, I was still like, I would fit in enough, but not enough to really be like the frat guy. I had that familiar feeling of like, I know it's just the dynamics, but I felt like, oh, wow, getting my ass kicked again. Like, all this stuff felt very familiar. And then me and my girlfriend just got into a relationship and we just moved in. And that was difficult because the fire department training puts a lot of pressure on you. And the people you're with may or may not get it. Didn't really get it that much.
Yeah.
And so there was just so much going on with me, man. I was just holding it together. I was like, if I survive this, I can handle anything. And I honestly, I attribute the fact that I have had success as an entrepreneur solely to the fire department training, because that was the hardest time of my life. And if it wasn't for that, I honestly don't know if I would have had the resilience to get through entrepreneurship, ups and downs and hardships.
So on that end, do you see a change and a shift in first responders in the mental health awareness side of it?
It's interesting. I think there's more mental health initiatives now, but I think that there's still a lot of resistance from first responders to. I think there's still a lot of resistance to conversations. I think there's a lot of freaking masking. There's so, like, I remember, the guys are like, oh, we crack jokes about terrible shit because it makes life better. I'm like, that's not correct. Like, it's like, that we call that masking in the professional world. And a lot of guys, if they're first responders and they're listening to this, they probably think, oh wow, listen to this asshole right now. Like, I'm telling the truth, so stop calling me an asshole. But that's the reality of it, right? Is yeah, right. And so it's one of those things where it's like, oh, we make jokes to ease the hardship, because if we don't laugh, we're gonna like cry or whatever, whatever the thought is. But the reality is that doesn't have to be how it goes. You could make jokes. I laugh at all the shit that's happened to me in my past, and that helps me. I agree. But I've also talked about it, dealt with it, processed it, went through it. Like, I didn't just make jokes and ignore it. If that's that's the difference between like doing it the healthy way and doing it the unhealthy way.
So now, how in the coaching realm, now that you have moved over and you're on the coaching side, how have you taken that mental health transition? And because it's your tool set, right? I mean, you've got your masters in it, you've got this other stuff. How have you kind of woven that into the coaching side?
Sure. So I've created, like I mentioned before, I created this very unique hybrid service. There's very honestly, I don't know anyone else that's even doing what I'm doing. I'm sure they're out there. It's very uncommon that you have therapists that pursue coaching, and vice versa. It's very uncommon. You'll see someone who's a coach. It's like, I think I'm going to go through 6 years of school and learn how to be a therapist. Like, that doesn't happen, especially if you're already a coach. So I do have this very unique approach where I like to tell people I don't show up with an agenda, right? And I think that's how every good coach or therapist should show up, because the reality is we show up. Our job is not to create change. Our job is to facilitate an environment for change to occur. So I don't know what you really need. I'm going to show up. You bring whatever it is to the table, and then I'll look at what it is, and I might go, oh, today's going to be a coaching day. Oh, wait, this one's heavier. Today might be a therapy day. And then, oh, hey, this guy just wants a little bit of advice, some perspective. Today might be a mentoring day. Like, we'll see what you bring, and then that will basically bring a piece of me out, and we'll see.
And I think a good part of that for you, especially a good tool to be able to have, is you can tell when somebody isn't bringing you the entirety of what they need to bring to you. And so you can kind of feed through that and be like, okay, now it's a mentorship time. Now I need to be able to say, hey, you need to let me in a little bit more.
Yeah, I've confronted some clients on like, listen, I don't feel like you're really getting as much as you could out of the service. If it's me, like, cool, let's maybe part ways. But if it's not me, if it's truly like I don't suck, and that's not why you're not utilizing it, what do you feel is the biggest thing that's stopping you? Like, why, for instance, all the clients I work with, they could text me anytime. It's like 24/7 access. So I had a client, he was going through a lot of stuff and he wouldn't text me. And don't get me wrong, it's like you're not forced to. But one, you're paying for it. Like, it's literally in my package pricing. And two is like, I do that because I don't believe you're going to get great results. And there's going to be a lot of therapists and coaches out there that will disagree with me, and that's fine. You guys are entitled to your opinion. But I don't believe you're going to get great results if you're struggling with a problem for a week or 2 weeks, and like that's just it. Like, why would I want you to do that, right? My thing is not to sit there and coddle you and make you dependent on me, but more so I'm results oriented. If you got a problem, shoot me a message. If we can fix it in 5 to 10 fucking minutes, great. Let's do that. Why wait 2 weeks?
Why am I going to bring you along through this when the point is healing in the process?
Exactly. And it's those moments too where like the client starts building up another level of confidence and resilience, because if I could get to you quick in the moment that you're going through it, I could also learn a lot more about you. And like, you're going to come to me in 2 weeks after or a week after the problem happened. There's going to be less emotional intensity. There's going to be a different type of thought process. There's going to be a different type of experience. So you might be able to you might still be upset about it, but it's very different if you text me in the moment. You're like, hey, Vin, I'm dealing with this. What do you think? As opposed to, oh, I dealt with this a week ago. Yeah, what happened? Well, I figured it out. Oh, how'd you figure it out? Oh, I just thought blah, blah, blah. And sure, you'll hear their thought process, but like, it's very different. It's very, very different. So, sometimes I confront people on that. I'll just be like, listen, how can we get you more out of the service if it's not being utilized? And I try to really sit there with people.
Well, and I think that's a large aspect of what's missing in coaching, because individuals will pay you for the reality of the situation. They want to know, how can I get better? How can I fix it? And when you're going through the heat, when you're going through the thing, and your thought process is as much of importance to that in being able to work through it. So if you can work with a client and go, okay, hey, what are you feeling right now? Okay, where do you want to go? And that's those moments when steel is always bendable when it's hot. If it's not hot, you're not going to be able to build it and manipulate it and mold it into what you need it to be.
I agree.
So, and I mean, that brings us right back to the firefighter thing, right? I mean, you've got every aspect covered in this, because going through what you went through, right? Growing up, coming out of the bullying situation, going and not really even dating anyone for an extended period of time, and not realizing the emotional attachment that had, seeing girls and being like, oh, okay, what, they like me? Like, oh, that's weird. There's a lot within that is needed in corporate America. They need to understand what that looks like. So I think you have a great game plan that you've brought together with all of that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean it's been a really interesting journey. I like to spend a lot of time reflecting on my life. I'm a deep thinker in general. I don't know what classifies someone as a modern day philosopher. I don't know if I would be considered one, but I really do spend a lot of time reflecting on life and asking questions that do seem to be really thought provoking, right? A lot of the way that I've overcome many issues in my life is just continuing to question it. Like I'll just sit there and be like, why? What does that mean that? Where did I even get that idea from? Why does it have to mean that? In fact, what if it didn't mean that? What if it meant something else? What would life look like that I would be living if I thought this way? And then even cooler is not only what if the life was different because I thought different, how would that impact others different? And then if other people were impacted different, how would they respond to me? And if they responded to me in a way that I thought was more favorable, how could that continue? Like just this whole spirally, circly train of thought that I'll sit there and I'll just think of every intricacy of how I could build myself to create more impact and do more things for other people, which ultimately is like, how does that feed into my ultimate goal, which my life mission, my mission on this planet is to impact 1 billion people. So I'm just like sitting here and I'm like, who the hell do I need to become? How much do I need to become to impact 1 billion people? Because I'm going to give you a nugget. You didn't ask for this, but I want to share it because I love it. I think it's so important. Goals, right? A lot of people think goals are something you achieve. A lot of people think that a goal is like, oh, if I get that thing, that will like be phenomenal, right? Like if the goal is, I think all my problems would be fixed if I had $1 million, right? So the goal is what? To earn $1 million? No. The point of a goal is not actually about the goal itself. The point of a goal is to challenge you to evolve into the person you need to become to live out that goal. You don't have $1 million, not because, well, you don't have $1 million, but you don't have $1 million because you are not capable yet of being the person that you need to be to produce $1 million, to deliver $1 million product or service, to provide that much value, and then to get the exchange, right? Because money is just an energetic exchange value that's perceived. So you are not that person who is valuable enough yet to be perceived to receive $1 million. And so when I look at that goal of mine to impact 1 billion lives, I mean, that's like the most daunting question of my life is who must I become to really have that much influence and impact? How much do I need to do? What do I need to learn? Where do I need to be? Who must I serve? How much must I serve? What's the time constraint? What's the value prop? Like tons of questions flop into my mind when I think about just that goal and the terms of evolution that comes with it.
Wow. And I mean, I never, that's, see, now you've got me at a loss for words, which is never good for a podcast host, by the way. But goals and the point of challenging yourself to be the person that needs or that can accomplish that goal. Never really thought of it in that perspective. You know, I always thought of goals, as you said, like that next step to what I want. So that's a very, very interesting point of that you, that's a very interesting rabbit hole that we just went down. And I appreciate the vulnerability of you being able to take just those little nuggets and throw them out here, because sometimes they won't stick and they won't resonate with people. But, you know, we've got somewhere around 3,000 listeners for each episode. So I know that somewhere out there it's going to hit one. And if it hits just this is the thing I don't think people understand with the words that they say, and why some people become so very choosy about what they say. If your words impact one person, mission accomplished. Done.
I'm happy. Well, you know, I'll tell you, here's another funny thing. Well, it's not funny, like haha funny. It's just like funny coincidental. But I really wanted to become a speaker with my life because, you know, in addition to the coaching, but speaking is really near and dear to my heart. That's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I'm booked on 50 podcasts. That's why I'm trying to get my voice out there, and not just to impact 1 billion lives, but because when my therapist didn't help me, And I was constantly contemplating suicide, and I was dealing with all this. And YouTube was, I don't want to say it was like super new. Started really like learning, getting into it, but it was new. And so I would go on there though, and I found like motivational videos and motivational speakers. And when my therapist didn't help me, my college years, right? My therapist didn't help me. I would listen to motivational speakers. One in particular was Les Brown. And I would listen to these guys, and it would feel like they were breathing life into me. And I know the power of vulnerability. I lead with vulnerability because, one, you can't hurt me. I'm actually leading with vulnerability makes me invulnerable. Like, I would love it if someone was like, you think you're a cool speaker? You're a loser. You got pantsed in the schoolyard by your crush. I'd be like, wow, which podcast did you hear that on? Like, it wouldn't faze me. Like, I already told you about it. You can't use it against me. And so that's the power of vulnerability. But the other part is I think when you share your story, I know what it did for me to hear that people had it just as bad, if not worse, and overcame it, because it gives me hope. And so if I could save somebody's life by telling a story, and even if I don't save a life, if I can inspire you or give you hope or just give you a new perspective, that's honestly good enough for me, because it's a pay it forward kind of thing. That people did that for me. I mean, they didn't know it, but I'm sure they had a similar mission. That's why they put out their voice and their message. That's why I'm doing the same.
Being such an individual of, a stoic individual and someone who is a lifelong learner, what are some of those books, or one of those books that has really impacted you that you would recommend to individuals wanting?
So I love Lives of the Stoics by Ryan Holiday. It's a phenomenal book because it talks about virtually all the noteworthy Stoics, from literally the first Stoic. His name is Zeno. Very interesting guy. But why I like Stoicism is because, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, I believe that Stoicism was like the first world's form of self mastery. Like, it's all about the self. It's all about controlling your emotions, understanding that you can't change anything in the external world. It all has to be within, all internal. And so I really love that. I think it's the start of like mindset work. And so Stoics are very inspiring to me. I've learned a lot from them, and the philosophies that they carry are just absolutely phenomenal. I think if people could, and we talked about Marcus Aurelius before, right? World's greatest Stoic. So if people could learn how to use Stoicism, but integrate it with humanity, which is what Marcus Aurelius did, why he was the greatest emperor and Stoic, is because he would master himself. One of my favorite quotes of his was, be strict with others and tolerant. Be strict with yourself and tolerant of others. And that is an amazing quote. It is an amazing piece of advice and wisdom, because if you could utilize that I believe is the essence of Stoicism mixed with like a humanitarian view, because you can only really control you, keep expectations for you, be strict with you, high standards for you, but be curious, honor other people, admire their qualities, and just see other people for who they are.
So I'm a huge Ryan Holiday fan, and I'm actually currently reading Courage is Calling. So really, any of his books are just absolutely impactful. So very highly recommended on that one. Hey, Vin, how can people get a hold of you and get in contact with what you're doing and how it might work in their lives?
All right. So I always love for people to check out Instagram, because I post tons of free content there. And I try to throw out as many nuggets as I can, much like on the podcast. So Instagram is vin.infante. I really don't like keeping secrets. Please check out the free stuff. You guys can check me out on TikTok, LinkedIn. It's all Vin Infante. And then the best spot, you can also shoot me a DM on Instagram. I always answer. And the best spot to really get some more info is on my website, www.vincentinfante.life. I have a free resource on there. I call it a mission board. It's a good version of a vision board, but it's even better because I made it. So please check that out, download it. It's a great time. I put a lot of work and effort into it. It's completely free. And you could also book a free call with me on my website too. It's called Strategy Session.
So
that's how
I
you
actually
can get in touch
just
with me.
added you on Instagram, and I asked, do you really answer here? So now I'm going to actually find out if you really do answer here. Hey, any final words for our listeners today?
Yes. I'm going to end it with a quote.
Yes.
And it is going to be another philosophizer. So I love this quote. It's life-changing. Actually, can I do two
Go
quotes?
ahead.
I just thought of another one.
No.
But I want to give this one. Okay. Spectacular. Okay. These two quotes, I love them. So one is by Socrates. He says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, not an act, but a habit." And if you're wondering why I pause so much, it's because he wrote commas after each place that I paused. And because I memorized this damn quote, I memorized all the quotes, the commas too. So that is one of my favorite quotes because it truly invites you to think of identity shifts, right? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. If you want to become excellent, you must embody it by doing it daily. Excellence is not something you could achieve, something you do. And the second quote that popped into my mind right as I was saying I was going to give the Socrates quote was another quote that I love. This guy, he's actually more modern. He's a very interesting guy if you've never heard of him. His name is Dr. Billy Olsbrooks. Love him, man. I listen to his motivational videos, and he's so interesting. He's like a pastor and a rapper, and he's got some crazy lyrics. And I'm listening to one of his videos, and he said, "Greatness isn't something you achieve; it's displayed." And I was like thinking about that. I'm like,
wow,
damn. Like you can't go buy greatness. You can't get it off the shelf. You can't pick it up and bring it home. You got to work day in and day out until that shit's displayed because it's inside of you. But you got to bring it out. You can't ever go and get it elsewhere. And I was like, I'm going to work every damn day for this. I love that quote. And I hope everybody loves it as much as I do.
That, as we say in our house, is fire.
Spitting fire.
Spitting. See, I just actually tried my New York accent. Spitting fire. No, didn't work at all. Okay, cool.
I think that's Boston. I think that's Boston, man.
Aren't they the same thing? Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Any of your sports fans are going to kill me now. They're now going to kill me, so.
Also, check your Instagram DM.
Oh, you did that, huh? Yes, you did. And folks, just to let you know, he does in fact reply, even in the middle of a show taping. Hey, Vin, thank you so much, man. This has been a huge blast. It has been something different, and this is kind of more the mood and the mode that this show is going to take. And so I'm grateful for you to kind of set the pace for us moving forward. Truly, thank you for investing into us, because that's the way that we feel it. It's an investment, because if you can make us a little bit better, then maybe we will make somebody else as well a little bit better themselves. Today's episode is only possible thanks to my friend and producer, G. Frazier, with 369sounddesign.com. He is truly the one with the hardest job in the industry, because he, day in and day out, has to make me somehow sound good. We are blessed by the entire team here at the Wartime Leadership Podcast. See you next time. Be blessed. Well, what an amazing way to end 50 episodes, our first, quote, season of the podcast. G and I are going to take a couple of weeks off, regroup. We've got new guests starting in 2 weeks. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Between now and then, we're going to have some of our favorite outtakes, some of our favorite episodes, and really some lessons learned from the first season of the Wartime Leadership Podcast. We look forward to being back with you in 2 weeks with new guests, but be looking for that special episode dropping here shortly. As we always say here, be blessed.